One of the interesting aspects of the Blackstone River Valley is that we go back to the Native Americans, the Nipmuc, Narragansett, and the Attic. There's many tribes who called this their home, and it was also a place of great conflict because when the English settlers came here, they wanted a piece of this wonderful landscape as well. And then the development of the Industrial Revolution was the other aspect that made this place just a little bit different. This is really a complex story, and therefore the site where the story is told, this landscape, is also very complex because you have your heavy industry. You have your brick and mortar and granite and stone, and you're manipulating of nature to power these great industries. How can I power these mills to run all these spindles, to make all this thread, to make this cotton and fabric that was so important to the United States economy? And we use water power. Remember that the Blackstone Valley was never thought of as a place to be. It was a neglected, impoverished area due to the mills all going south. And so nothing happened here. The good thing when nothing happens is no one tore the buildings down, no one redesigned the fields, and therefore you can find all kinds of mill structures in the middle of the woods, pieces of the Blackstone Canal in the middle of the woods, canal locks in the middle of the woods, farmsteads in the middle of the woods, roads, bridge abutments, all these things that give you an indication of what happened in the past. 200 years later, we have steam, we have nuclear, we have lots of different ways to use to power our mills, and nature hasn't gone away. It's still here. The river is still part of the landscape, but the landscape is very reminiscent of back then. There's still these pieces, these wonderful mill villages, but there is that agricultural, pastoral landscape that surrounds it. So you'll find people paying a lot of money to come out here to get 2 acres for a big estate on this landscape that is in the heart of an industrial environment, but it's not the kind of industrial environment you thought you knew if you come from some other place in the United States. We've come almost 360 degrees from where we were at one time. When the Nipmuc and the Narragansett were here, they used to go down to the river and drink out of the river, and it was clean outside of whatever upstream animals put into it. But then, when the industrial age came about, we put everything. It was our drain. We flushed everything we didn't want into the river and it would go away. I mean, we're talking Narragansett Bay and the ocean, so people downstream were always getting waste from people upstream. And so it had everything in it, from heavy metals, toxic metals, pieces of yarn, cars, pieces of metal discarded, you name it, it was in this river. And with over 200 years of industrial development, the river showed the wear and tear that you would assume to take place. Today, I think we're a lot more cognizant of the important role we as humans play in the environment and how much we have, or we owe back to the planet to take care of it. And in the Blackstone, we were trying very hard to bring it back to life. We've already seen from some of the local people we've talked to some significant changes in the turbidity of the water. It's much cleaner from a visual perspective. You can see the bottoms. I can see snakes in the river and turtles and things like that. But we have a lot to overcome. Remember, the northern part of the valley was heavy metals. They made the barbed wire that settled the American West. 90% of it was manufactured in Worcester. The mills were right along the Blackstone River. The waste went into the Blackstone River. So you still have that level of toxicity in the stream banks of the river. So there is a lot to do. Our goal is that we want it to be fishable and swimmable, but with 200 years of abuse, it's not going to be done in 36 years. Brick and stone and granite you'll find in unusual places. And that's where somebody thought, some young man, some family thought that they could make a living by harnessing the power of the stream, the brook, the river, and they would build something there. A rudimentary stone or brick building. They would put some water wheel in there, some looms or other machinery, lathes if they were into machines, and that's how they would try to make a living. And so having that vision, seeing something that was not there before and then creating it, is probably as close as you can come to what really is about the story of America. The fact you have the ability to do that. And what was really fascinating about this time frame is that when the American Revolution broke out, all the people who were fighting the revolution had been British subjects at one time. The kids who were born during the Revolution and just after had only known life as an American citizen. They had no boundaries of kings and queens and lords and bishops. They only knew what they could create was what they could do. And therefore you had this fascinating story of people trying new things. And they'd lose their shirts, but they try, and they try again. It's very similar to some way to the dot-com revolution we had very recently, where people would try, they'd lose, and they'd try again. You look down the road of the future of the Blackstone Valley. I think it's a place where you can find industry and nature coming together. And how they work together without overpowering one or the other depends upon us, the people who live here, to take a look at the valley and say, you know, we need a place for industry because we need jobs. That's what drew people here to begin with. But we need to respect the power of Mother Nature and water and the landscape. And we need open space because sometimes we need to clear our heads. We need to go to a place to go and take a walk. If we fenced it all in, we put houses there and buildings, then there's no place for us to go and breathe. Nature takes this stuff back. You know, if you don't pay attention to it, it's going to gobble it up and hide it with vines and poison ivy and everything else, and you won't know it's there.